Here in front of us is a 350 small block Chevy. In part one, we started with tearing down the engine, getting the engine bored over and machined, and then beginning the rebuild process by installing the crankshaft, gapping the rings, and installing the pistons and rods. Here in part two, we're going to be starting by showing our freshly painted block, installing the AFR cylinder heads, installing the camshaft, timing chain, lifters, push rods, and rockers. This 350 small block build is going to be spread across 4 different videos. All of them are going to be very informational. You're not going to want to miss out on them, so stay tuned for when we release parts 3 and 4 coming very soon. If you have not already, please head over to zhpgarage.com. You can reach out to us on there if you're having trouble with building your 350 small block engine or any engine in general. Don't forget to check out the merchandise that we have for sale, our t-shirts, hats, stickers, all sorts of other things. We got one of the cylinder heads put on it already. This is final, done deal. You can see we got it painted. I masked it off because the head does not cover the complete surface. I already cleaned the surface, nice, dry. With brake cleaner, I got a new head gasket. Then you just want to note that this thing does have an orientation, so it has an up. So make sure you don't put it on upside down. And head gaskets always go on dry, so you just want to give it a look and make sure there's no damage to it. To make it easier, we're going to rotate this up so it's a flat surface. And this block is actually missing one of the dowel pins. It should have 2 dowels, but we're gonna live without it. So we're gonna put our gasket on here. So on this engine, we're running the Airflow Research cylinder head. These are a brand new cylinder head. These are a 202 intake, 160 exhaust valve. These are just a 195 intake runner, and they have a hydraulic roller valve spring on it. Nothing upgraded, just the way they are out of the box. So even though the head is new, I'm gonna wipe it down just because it's been touched and who knows what in the box, and just because these rags are a little linty, as you can see. I'm gonna give the head a little blow. So now we got the head all cleaned and prepped. So I'm gonna put one hand in the exhaust port, the other one here in the center where the heat riser would be, but this doesn't have it. So I'm just gonna grab it here. Gonna set it down straight. In this case, we only have 1 dowel, so we're gonna fake it a little bit. We're going to kind of line up our head bolts. So normally if there's 2 dowels, we would just set the head on there. It would hold itself in place, line everything up. It's not the end of the world, as you can see, if it's missing one. So we're going to be using ARP fasteners, and the head's just a bolt, not a stud. And then because of all of these bolts go into the water jacket, we're going to use Teflon paste on the threads, and then under the washer, we put the ARP fastener lube under the washer. And then the washer goes with the tapered side, chamfer, whichever you want to look at it, is going to go to the flat washer of the bolt, like so. And on a small block Chevy, so the heads on a factory deal are 3 different lengths. So you have 2 on the ends of the head, which are going to be here and here, are going to be shorter. Obviously all the ones on the outside are all the same length, but they're the shortest. And then we have the longer ones go on the inside here. So it's a little bit of a messy deal. I don't have I guess you can use a little brush, but I just use my finger. More worried about the under the head. And then anything extra I'm just going to wipe off. So get some lube on there, and then we'll get our washer. Goes right there. So now that we got all the bolts in it, we're going to run them down. And because we cleaned all the threads out, it gives it a lot easier to run the bolts down, and plus it gives it a nicer torque reading because it doesn't, the bolts aren't trying to grab on a dirty thread. It actually gives it more accurate torquing. So that's why we want to have nice clean bolt holes to install the bolts and to torque them properly. So ARP wants to torque their head bolts to 70 foot-pounds in the configuration that we did with the lube on the washer. So now I'm going to do it in 50 foot-pounds. So I'm going to do a circular motion. So I'm going to start in the center, and I'm going to circularly work my way out. Here in the middle, we want to give it a constant 1 pull. And now we're going to move it up to our 70 foot-pounds. Then what I like to do is I like to just go around all of them, because sometimes you can have it where you start in the center and then you torque it out. By the time you get to the outside, the center ones are not what you started at. Even though the head gaskets say that they're pre-flattened, pre-compressed, it still can change. So I'm just going to start here, and I'm just going to go around in a circle. So we'll see if make sure they're all even. See? Got a little bit more on that one. See, we get closer to the center. That one was good. Just had one of them that moved a little. Not too shabby. And there we go. Now we got both cylinder heads installed. All right, so now we are going to install the camshaft. This camshaft I actually bought off of Facebook Marketplace. It is a new regrind from what the guy said, but it's the factory roller cam. Factory roller block, so we're gonna do a factory setup. What makes it a factory roller, see how it has this little recess here? So the cam retainer plate actually goes around it and keeps the camshaft from going forward. And then your timing chain sprocket will go on here, and that's what keeps it from going backwards. So that's what holds it in place. Got our cam cleaned up, so we're gonna just lube the whole deal. So I'm just gonna run it down, then we're gonna go heavy on the rear journal, but it's the first one that goes in. Then the extra we're gonna put on the cam bearing here. Then we're just gonna go down the line. Put some on the lobes, and you gotta be fast enough before it runs off the cam onto the floor. Once we get it started, we can get it going in. So now I got the camshaft in far enough that I can't hold on to it anymore, so I'm gonna use the sprocket. So I'm just gonna put it on the cam. We're gonna use one of the bolts to hold it to the cam. Now I have something to grab onto. Now we're gonna work it the rest of the way in, like so. So now we got the camshaft installed. We're gonna take our sprocket back off. So our retainer plate is gonna ride on the camshaft here. So we wanna put some lube on the inside where it's gonna rub on the camshaft. It's just easier to lube the whole thing. So now we can set our retainer plate on here. The camshaft will hold it in place. So this came with a Phillips screw head, which I didn't care for, so I upgraded it to an Allen, which I think would be a nicer head. You can get a little tighter. Put Loctite on here. And it looks to be like there's a little bit of slop in here, so we're going to try to center it up as much as possible with the camshaft. It's not that critical because it's not going to touch it, but nicer to the eye. Go ahead and tighten those down. All right, so next we're going to install the timing chain for this. I decided to go with just a single roller, just a factory setup. So people say, why a single roller? So it is a bigger chain than a double, and this is a factory roller. Cam engines came with a single roller timing chain, so it doesn't have a crazy amount of spring pressure, so I feel it'll be just fine. And then one thing to note though, if you are planning on running a double roller timing chain, that this here you need to check this before you get too crazy, because the double roller is thicker and the chain will actually rub right here, so you need to sand that a little bit, or better to do this than it would be the timing chain. But if you run a double roller, this needs to be modified. It needs to be sanded down a little bit. But since we're just running the single, we don't have to worry about that. So we have options on our keyway here. We could do it, we got 4 degrees advanced, we got 4 degrees retarded, or we could run it straight up. So the dot is straight up. So we got the crankshaft oriented on top dead center. This is a compression stroke. So I lubed the inside of the sprocket. So when we're all said and done, the dot wants to be straight up. That's where we're going to line up with. Got some lube here, so this will go on a little easier. And then obviously the marks need to go to the front, but the radius is going to go to the back where it goes up against the crankshaft. So we're going to slide this on here, get it started. So there's a whole bunch of different ways you can put this on there. I don't want to beat it on there. So I'm just going to use a ginormous socket that fits over the crankshaft, and then I'm going to use a long bolt going to the snout of the crank. Got to put a washer on there because of the 3/8 drive, and I'm just going to slowly draw it on there. I put a little lube on the bolt, little ARP, so it's not galling up as I go on. This is why you want to give a little lube on the sprocket, because we got metal on metal, so we don't want it galling or dragging as it goes on. And I think we ran out of deep on our socket, so now we need a deeper socket. So now we got a deeper socket here. I didn't run out of socket, I ran out of threads. So my engine is trying to rotate on me, so I'm gonna use a screwdriver, put it in the ring gear of the flex plate. So we're gonna hold the engine from rotating. Finishing up, installing it here. It's gonna get really hard when the bottom's out. Feels like right about there. And if it's not quite all the way seated, when you install the dampener, we'll definitely squash it the rest of the way, but it got hard there, so it's definitely all the way installed. So I'm using an ARP cam bolt, so I'm going to put Loctite on the threads, and then under the head, I'm going to take the ARP lube, and then we're going to take the cam sprocket, and you can see I already lubed it with the same assembly lube on here, where it runs up against the retainer plate on the cam. So now we want to line up this dot with the crankshaft dot. So we're going to put that in the lower, get our chain, get it on here. So now we got our crankshaft in the right position. We got it dot aiming up, and then we already rotated the cam. So the keyway is over here. So we should be able to just come up, put the timing chain on, and then line it up at the cam. Then we get one of our bolts in here. We're going to snug down our 3 bolts. That's going to draw the sprocket into the camshaft, get everything lined up. So our timing is a little off. So we're gonna give it a bump. So whenever we're lined up, dot to dot, just because everybody thinks you gotta rotate it around, we can do two revolutions. So the crank spins at twice the speed of the camshaft. So if you do 180 of the crank, then your cam is 180 out. So we'll keep spinning, coming around dot to dot. Verify that we are all lined up. So now we're going to torque our cam bolts. So I'm going to hold the crankshaft. So we're going to torque it this way. So we're going to hold it in the opposite direction. So we're going to torque our 3 of our bolts here to 25 foot-pounds. So 1, 2, 3. So now we're all finished up with the timing. Everything's good up front here. So we got our new gasket, sliding over the dowel pins. So I already prepped the timing cover. We got it painted. I like to have everything painted separately so it has a nice detail. You can see the gaskets, like the head gaskets. So you can't say that it's an aerosol overhaul. So now we're gonna slide our timing cover on to the dowels. So now I have my bolts here that I painted separately. I put a little bit of ARP on here, the little lube, to try not to get the head to grab the timing cover because I don't want to mess up the paint. So we're gonna snug these all down, get them all started. Seems like my timing cover is a different shade of Chevy orange than my block is. Guess I need to paint it all with the same paint can. I'm gonna tighten them down here, give them a good cram. All right, now we got the timing cover all installed, so now we're gonna put the crank seal in it. So I like to pack some trans gel in the back of the seal here, just when I'm hitting it in, that the spring, I've just seen them before. I've never had a problem with it, but I've seen it before that the spring can pop off just because of the reverb. Lube up the seal lip here where it's gonna ride on the dampener. So I already got brake cleaner on a rag and I wiped in here. So I'm gonna do the same on the outside of the seal here. Give it just a nice wipe on the outside. You don't want to take all this red off. This is actually a sealant. And then now you got to carefully put it on here without touching the outside of any of this. So we're going to get it up in there like so. And then I'm going to use the same little installer, AKA my ginormous socket, that will fit around the crank snout and it'll push evenly on the seal. And then this is going to have a little bit of a reverb, a little vibration, because on the bottom here there's nothing to support it. So what you want to do is you just got to get kind of angry with it. You got to give it a good tap. So get it squared up. So we're a little sticking out on the bottom here. So I'm going to give it a good whack. Get it started. And then just carefully get it around. If you get to the point where your socket is going to bottom out on the cover and you're gonna scrape it, you can use an extension here. Just tap it evenly around. See, it's bottomed out there on top. See, the pitch is different. There it goes a little bit more on the bottom. So now it's all the way evenly installed. So now we have the dampener. So we already lubed the seal where it's going to ride on the outside of the hub here. So we're going to add some silicone to the inside of it where it's going to go around the crankshaft because we don't want it to leak oil out the crank through the dampener bolt. So we're going to put a little bit of silicone in here. Just wipe that around evenly. Just we need to film, nothing crazy. So we're just going to give it a wipe here on the back because we don't want the silicone to be up against the sprocket. So now we have our keyway. So line up our keyway. So now we're going to use a dampener installer tool. So this is set up, this particular one is Big Block Chevy and Small Block 7/16, Big Block 1/2 inch. So we're going to back off our big nut here. We got a bearing to go up against this. So we're going to install it into the crankshaft first. Make sure we got a good amount of threads. Then I'm going to hold this with a wrench because I don't want it to try to rotate the installer anymore into the crankshaft. It doesn't make any sense to me. We got a little wrench and this ginormous one, so it's not very fair. Hopefully it goes on pretty easy. So then we'll just go ahead and install it. Hold the one, tighten the other. So there we go, we just bottomed out. So I'm going to hold this here good and give it a good cram. Got the dampener all the way installed, so we'll back the nut off here, then we can remove the tool. So I'm just going to install the dampener bolt for right now, just hand tight, because a lot of times I don't know what pulleys I'm going to run on here yet. And sometimes the pulleys are behind the dampener bolt, but I want to put this on here just so I'm able to have something to spin the engine over. And we'll get to this later, but I don't know if you could tell, but I modified the timing pointer here. There was another spot on the edge over here that came over and actually had a hole in it. And I wound up cutting it off because all I'm concerned about is where top dead center is, so 0. I would have cut more of this off, but it would have made it too flimsy, so I left it just to keep it from bouncing around. But 0 is the only thing that I'm concerned about. So the only thing that I'm looking at when I'm timing this thing is this mark in the dampener to 0, but we'll go over that more of that later. So now I'm going to install the lifters. So this is just a little case that it got shipped in. Put some assembly lube on it. It has some oil in there, so I'm just going to pull each one out, give it a wipe around. It's already pretty oiled up. Check the rollers, everything looks good. So these particular ones, they can rotate in there. They're all individual. So the only thing that holds them in straight is after you get 2 of them in, this is what holds them straight. So he's going to go over the lifter. That's what keeps them running true. So a little fun fact while I install these are LS7 lifters. So the LS engine lifter is the same lifter as the factory roller first gen small block Chevys. So you could see, you could have a problem if you have a high lift cam. You see this notch comes up. So if this thing were to have more lift and got to the point where it came up and that comes out of the bore, then it would hit these little dog bones, they call them, and it would cause a valve train noise. So I'm just checking full lift. So this lifter is on full lift, and you can see they were not up high enough We can come up a little bit more before it comes up. So we're in no risk of it hitting the little dog bone, and plus these are chamfered. We shouldn't have any problem with the lifters hitting, making any valve tray noise, so that's good. Verified that. So all the lifters and dog bones are installed. So now we're going to use a little spider retainer plate here, and this goes in and holds all the little dog bones down with 3 bolts. So I'm using grade 8 bolts with a star washer to lock it on here, but I'm still going to put it Loctite on the threads. Be a bad deal if this came loose, all of our lifters dancing around in there. And this has a little bit of adjustment, not much. I want to make sure it's all centered up as much as possible. I'm going to hold it right there, tighten it down, keep these good and tight. Now let's give verification that we're centered up. We're not going to hit the lifters. Looks good. Wipe up our Loctite here. All right, so it's been a little bit. We had to order the push rods. So now that we got the push rods, got those installed, and we got the rockers installed. So we got them all on here, and I want to show you how we did it. I left 2 off over here. These screw and studs and guide plates come with the cylinder heads, but they don't come installed. And you can see on these guide plates, they're adjustable. So you can kind of manipulate them side to side a little bit to get the rocker straight on the tip of the valve. So you kind of got to play with it, but you got to be careful. If you get it too far over, then your push rod will come in here, and if you get too far over, it can rub the cylinder head. When you got it all said and done, we'll rotate it over and verify that we're not rubbing the head and we're just touching the guide plate right here. So these are a hardened push rod. They're stock length for the factory roller, so they're 7/200 length, and the wall thickness is 80 thousandths, and it's a 1-piece push rod. And then these rocker arms are all the same ratio. They're all 1.5, which is a stock ratio. I have 2 different sets, is because I had this set is used and it wasn't a full set, so I didn't want to run just 1 or 2, so I'm running half and half. So I put the new set on the intake and then the original set on the exhaust. So that's why, because it goes exhaust, intake, intake, exhaust, exhaust, intake, intake, exhaust. Screw and studs and the guide plates are lined up. So we have them torqued. These get torqued to 55 foot-pounds on the screw and studs. A little tip, you could put a screwdriver or something in here once you achieve location of where you want your guide plate, because when you torque this, it's going to try to rotate it and push this over. This one here doesn't really have a problem because it kind of comes up and pushes up against this. This one here doesn't move so bad, but the one on the left side tends to rotate. So I already have lube down here in the lifters. So we have our assembly lube down here. And then when you have a new push rod, you always want to blow it out with a brake cleaner, because they have machinery oils and stuff that get debris inside of them, and I've seen them plugged. And then if you put a rocker arm on here and cap it, in a sense, whatever that debris is has nowhere to go and you can't get out. So then you start an engine and you starve the top end and you wind up having a problem. The straw of the brake cleaner actually fits in there pretty good. You can put it in there, blow it out, make sure you get clear flow, it blows straight through, and then blow it with air and make sure the push rods are all cleared out. So then I'm just going to take some assembly lube here, put on the top of the push rod, and put a little on the thread, and a little on top of the valve. And then on the rollers, so they have a flat spot where the nut goes. And these are polylock, so if you see if this is spun, the other side doesn't have a flat spot. So yeah, you can put the nut on there and we'll hold it down, it's just not going to be correct. You can have a problem with it. So make sure it's spun, so the lock, the nut, can sit on there nice and flat. So slide them on the stud, line it up with our push rod, get our nut started, and then the same with the exhaust rocker here. And then before you get going on this, you want to make sure that the lock nut is backed off. So we'll just get it up here. And so I have both of these intake exhaust valve on the cylinder that I'm working on here. This is cylinder 2, are both closed. They're all the way down. So I'm going to run this down by hand. So I want to get rid of this slop, this lash that's in here. So pick on it ever so gently, because you can see once we get it down here. So I'm going to say that is my 0 lash. I have no more movement up and down. I mean, it's going to go side to side, but it's not up and down. But if you look in here, these are hydraulic lifters. So if I over tighten it, I can collapse the lifter. So that's why when you do a hydraulic cam, you go to 0 lash, which is where we're at now. We're at 0, because if we go any tighter, you can see we start collapsing our lifter as we tighten it. See how it's going down. So we're back up. So we got to make sure we're not collapsing the lifter. So we're going to go here to 0 lash. So now I'm going to take the nut here. I'm going to go any point, any start point. So I'm going to start here. I'm going to go 180 degrees. So that's how much I'm going to collapse. So I'm going to back it up a little bit. Okay, and then I want to put my nut down, jam my nut, and then as I tighten it, I want to cram it, so now it's locked. It locks the nut so they won't back off on you. You can still push it down and collapse the lifter. Once we start it or prime the oil pump and pump the lifter up, it'll push it up and we'll have 0 lash, so we won't have any clattery ticking in the engine. So we do the same on the
exhaust here, so we'll just run it down by hand. And you see we got a little bit of movement up and down. So we're gonna snug it a little bit more. And you can kind of feel when you're doing it, you can tell when it, like right there, we don't have any more slop in there. We're zero lash. So any more is gonna start pushing down on the spring and the lifter. So I'm gonna do the same thing. So I'll put my wrench on here. So I'm gonna do a half a turn. So we'll get the jam nut down here, we'll back it up a little, get the nut, and then cram it tight. And that's how we achieved all of our rockers set up here. So now what you want to verify is that the roller is riding in the correct location on the tip of the valve. So now I'm going to rotate it over in relation to the engine. We're on the top of the valve stem a little. So as we rotate the engine now, when we start to open that valve, it's going to swing out and it's going to pivot to the outside of the valve. So if we started on the outside, then we're going to go off the end. But then we're going to swing back in as we get to full lift. This actually doesn't have full lift right now because when it comes up, you can see that the lifter is collapsing. So it's got to collapse the lifter spring before it'll actually open the valve. So this isn't full lift, but you can get the same outcome on the rocker to valve stem. I'm happy with the location of that. It comes back to pretty much where it starts. We have a nice smooth operation. And then while we have this one here on lift, you can shine a light up from the bottom here and you can see around the push rod that we have a light shining between the push rod and the cylinder head. So you want to just go and verify even on the exhaust side here. So we have light on the front side here, so we just want to make sure that we're not rubbing the head anywhere. And then if you look at it from this side, see that the roller is centered on the tip of the valve. So we have our guide plates adjusted properly. It's the same concept on a flat tappet or any other setup. So now that we got our full roller valve train finished up, we have our roller lifters, roller cam, roller rockers. We're all done with the valve train, so that's going to finish it up on this video. Now we're going to move on to the final assembly of the engine.